Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our small group study entitled The Other Side. Together, we've been exploring what it means to go through life's storm. So we've talked about getting to the other side of our fear and our insecurities. Today, we're going to be discussing another big part of so many struggles that we deal with, and that is anxiety. Learning how to handle anxiety is so important because God wants us to live the abundant life. A life of joy and peace and purpose, and anxiety can really keep us away from that. So as we begin this time together, I want to acknowledge that I know anxiety is a big battle for many of us. In fact, it's an epidemic in our culture. And so in one sense, I try to enjoy connecting and talking and really inspiring you guys and having some fun during our small groups. But I also know that this small group, above all the rest, there's some real deep things that people are carrying and dealing with. Did you know that anxiety disorders, I did some study putting this together, that they're the most common mental illness in the United States. As of 2015, 40 million Americans over the age of 18 are affected by anxiety disorders, roughly 18% of the nation's population. That's a lot. Personally speaking, I have struggled at times with anxiety. I mentioned, I think it was a couple weeks ago, about after, Hurricane Katrina, 2005, as a pastor, our church was 6 years old at the time. What's interesting is I walked through that. There were some more challenges that we experienced as a church, but it's interesting, I found myself, because there was such loss attached to that for us as a congregation. Now, let me say this. So many people, and some of you here in our group, you experience extreme loss, losing homes and whatnot. So I don't in any way want to put myself on the same level as being pastoring the church. Our loss was people relocating. At the same time, you know what I found myself? And I finally, after about 3 or 4 years, I had to admit this. I actually had to get a little bit of some counsel and some coaching and some pastoral insight from some others to help me. Is that every year, towards the latter part of spring, early summer, when they announced hurricane season, I just felt anxious. And I'm not talking about just one day, I'm talking about like I would move into a posture where I would be consumed with that thought pattern. I mean, it would really dominate me. And finally, after a couple years, and the problem is the same thing happens every year. Yeah, right. So I want to say to you, there was a moment in my life where, and about 5, 6, 7 years ago, I had to deal with it. And let me just say, the stress is normal, but a life of anxiety is the opposite of a life with God. Yeah. The abundant life with God. So stress, I understand that. There's a certain element of stress, but I just want to say, just like we said about fear, anxiety is not God's plan and portion for your life. Jesus said in John 10:10, we've said it so many times, Jesus said, the thief, that's the devil, right? He's the antagonist. He's not for us. He's come for 3 reasons: steal, kill, and destroy. Jesus said, I've come that you may have life, and life more what? Abundantly. The abundant life, the abundance of joy, the abundance of peace, the abundance of purpose. So that's God's plan. You have to understand that. We have to see anxiety is not living again, not an anxious thought, but being marked by that. Does that make sense? There's a difference in that. So anxiety in the New Testament, the word anxiety actually means, listen to this, to be distracted, divided, or pulled apart. That's the opposite of the biblical definition of peace. Do you know the word peace in the Old Testament is what? Shalom. It's actually where, when you say shalom, it actually means wholeness. So the other side of anxiety is peace. So when God, here's the deal. The children of Israel come up to the Red Sea, and they've got Moses there, and what they were facing, there was this huge mountain of anxiety. What's the goal? The goal is to get to the other side. How do we live out daily a life of peace? Listen to this. And this will really give us a framework for 3 steps to the other side of our anxiety. 3 steps to the other side of our anxiety. Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 and 7. Paul said this, be anxious for nothing. Can you imagine how our life, the quality of our life, what it would be if we actually lived that way? Yeah. What? Yeah. What? Be anxious for nothing. I wouldn't even know what to do. I mean, I got to be anxious about something. Well, Paul says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. Now watch this. Will guard your hearts and your minds. Will guard your minds and hearts through Jesus Christ. Now, let me give you three things. Number one, if you're trying to get to a place where you're living in peace, wholeness, not fragmented, divided, and anxious, number one, we've got to learn to bring our worries to God in prayer. We've got to. So faith in God brings peace, but anxiety brings turmoil. Remember, what is anxiety? It means to be distracted and divided of heart and mind. What is peace? Wholeness. Biblical peace is wholeness. So faith changes us, but then faith in partnership with God changes our surroundings. Biblical Christianity starts with inside, but it doesn't stop inside. So when we bring our concerns to God, God changes us, but then He changes our circumstances, and it happens in that way. It's interesting when I realize in my own life how often I carry things that God wants to carry for me. You ever done that before? Yeah. You ever been carrying something and you just go, and it just like dawns on you, like, why am I carrying this? Well, why haven't I talked to God about this? It's like, wait a minute. We've got the Bible and the Holy Spirit. We've got God. I mean, why am I carrying this? God's got the power to help us. Don't carry what God tells you He wants to carry. Number one, we've got to bring our worries to God in prayer. Second thing is trade your worry for gratitude. Now, this is unique. Look at Philippians 4:6. Be anxious for nothing, but in prayer, but everything by prayer and supplication. Here it is, caveat, with, everybody say it, thanksgiving. With thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God. Those words, thanksgiving, it's interesting. We talk about it, of course, in America. We have Thanksgiving Day, where we understand our history and pilgrims and amazing, awesome. And we should be thankful. But Thanksgiving's not biblically speaking, it's not a day, it's a lifestyle. Biblically speaking, it's not a day, it's a mindset. So your Red Sea is anxiety, and you're dealing with whether it's a health concern, whether it's a child, whether it's a relationship, a marriage deal, a financial, a downsizing in jobs, and just whatever it is. Or maybe it's an addiction that you're fighting, and whatever it is, there's always going to be the tendency for our attention and focus to be on the mountain. It's right in front of us, right? I mean, how hard is it? I mean, it's just right there. But there's something about keeping our eyes on God and not on our mountain. We're not denying the mountain, but we're denying the mountain's right to control our energy, our focus, our time. We're saying, we recognize you're there, but God's bigger than that. We recognize you're there. And then gratitude, what gratitude is gratitude lifts your sights. It lifts your spirit. God, thank you. So what do? In the morning, I have a gratitude list, and I'll start reading it out. Lord, I start, thank you. The very fact that I'm here, I have health. The very fact that I'm here. Let me tell you, and I've got other people my age, right, that don't have the physical health. That I thank God for health. And let me tell you what happens. It's not that the problem changes immediately, but your perspective changes. And you're like, that's not going to steal from me. Now you get kind of aggravated. I'm letting that thing steal from me. I'm letting that thing dominate my life, my concern. Again, I'm not denying the fact that it's there, but I'm denying the right of that thing to dominate my life. Does that make sense? All right, let me give you this third and final thing. Here we go. Number 3, focus your minds, that's your thought patterns, on the pure and the positive. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, Paul writes, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of a good report, if there's any virtue, if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate. The word meditate is focused attention. Meditate on these things. What is Paul saying? Paul is saying that we should watch our thought patterns and take control of anxious thinking instead of focusing, listen, on the bad, focus on the good and the godly. Remember this, anxiety is an emotion. And emotions are the results of thoughts. Feelings of anxiety come as a result of negative thinking and patterns of unhealthy thoughts. So an emotion is not just neutral. An emotion came, it was elicited, it came, it was a result. It's evidence of unhealthy thinking. So unhealthy thinking produces unhealthy feelings. You have to see that. Where did this anxiety come from? Thought patterns. So how do I change this feeling? Thought patterns. I gotta go attack that thought. I gotta attack that thought with different thinking. I've got to attack it. Choose to set your mind on the pure, the positive, the God-honoring. How many of y'all would, again, be honest enough to say that that you realize that maybe it's something you're currently dealing with right now, that there's an anxiety that you're dealing with. How are you dealing with it? And maybe even through the teaching today, you realize that you've gotten some insights on maybe some why behind the what. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Well, my name is Tiffany.
Hello, Tiffany.
Hi. I actually dealt with I never thought of myself as a really stressed person or anxious person, but at the beginning of 2014, we moved here. And I had, before that, I was always working and doing things. I can't stay in the house on my day off. I gotta go, I gotta do. Always doing, always working. And we moved here and I wasn't working in the same way. My mind wasn't busy like that. Anxieties and fears and worry creeped into my life because my husband and I, we were working together. I was sending out emails every day and nothing was happening to get, finances in order and things like that. And I had so much anxiety on me. It showed up like medically. I was like, gosh, I feel like I have something growing in my throat. I thought I had a growth. And that caused more anxiety, more stress. And I actually went to the doctor for it. Yeah. And I don't go to the doctor a lot. Went to the doctor for it, and she's like, and I kind of talked to her about what's going on in my life and the lack of this and the lack of that. And then these worry thoughts start sprouting up. And she's like, yeah, you're having major anxiety, And, to get through it, I finally realized, like, I can't keep grabbing onto these things. I can't keep holding onto the mountain.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
And so I was like, okay, God, everything I'm doing, nothing is working. Nothing is taking root. I'm just gonna open my hand, right? We opened our hands and we're like, okay, I'm giving everything to you. Wow. And those things started melting off and, with prayer, from my husband and people in the church. And now, peace is a big thing for me. I'm always asking for peace.
That's right.
Yeah, even with my mother too. She recently went through a cancer scare and surgery and radiation and all these things. And I really showed her that, ask for God's peace. It is such a major thing. And worship music all the time.
All the time.
Even when I'm working, like doing art, worship music is on because I'm like, ooh, I'm scared to do this. Better turn on some worship music.
That's
because
good.
then I go in and I do it.
That's
and
good.
it helps.
Tell us your name.
Well, do you want to? No, you go. All right, my name's Mariana. So about 2 years ago now, we got married. And shortly after we got back.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. It's going great. It's all good. But right when we got back from our wedding and our honeymoon, there was a downturn in the oil and gas business, which is where I work. And so there was just a lot of anxiety between, coming together and just finding out where we're going to be financially and just a lot of, I'm feeling anxious just thinking about it right now.
Right.
But and once you get into work, everybody starts talking about how anxious they are and they just bought a new house and so is going to college. And, so you just start surrounding yourself by people that are talking about all their just anxious living. And it got to me at one point, and I'm thinking, what are we going to do? I don't have, what if I don't have a job? And you start thinking about all your what ifs. And, it was really difficult for us because I would then bring that home and kind of share that with him. And we were just recently married, so you can imagine more anxiety on top of that.
Sure.
So what was great was, we prayed about it, of course, and God just gave me so much peace because he reassured us that, we were being obedient financially in what he tells us to do, which is, to pray about it and to give when we're supposed to give, even when we don't feel like we should be giving, And then I took that back to work. And then every time I heard, somebody bringing up some sort of anxious thought or something, I would stop it right there, and I'd try to speak positive towards them.
Good.
But also I would walk away. I'd be like, don't think
That's a
that.
decision.
And then,
That's a good
because I could tell it was starting to affect me, and then I would bring it home. So the first thing, praying about it together was really great, but also not, like you said, not surrounding myself with that mindset was really important. And then at the end of the day was just knowing that God's our ultimate provider, and that was something he actually just reminded me of constantly, because sometimes we rely so much on our job security to define us, and so it was really great to think, we're going to be fine. God's always provided for us. He's going to continue to provide for us, and that reassurance gave me peace, just like you said, Brent. So it was just full circle, and thankfully everything worked out, and we're great now. So
what I love what you said. It's interesting. Our job is not our source. God's our source. The job is the tributary. But what's so cool, and listen, I'll say this, and sometimes we have to make some tough decisions where even with some relationships around us, we always want to be kind, we want to be courteous and polite, but we need some distance if somebody's just negative. I need oxygen. You know what I'm saying? I need life. I need encouragement. And so anybody would want to say, yes, sir.
Well, Pastor Steve, my name is Brent, and recently I've gone through some medical issues, and being me, I'm one that likes to do everything and not count on anybody, really, to be honest with you. So it was really tough to where you're sitting in the hospital and, excuse me, you can't do nothing. Sorry. And you're wondering what's going to happen to everything in my house. Sorry. So you're laying on that bed and, you have no power at all to do anything. I'm one that does everything, and it comes to a point where you got to say, God, you got to help me. And it's amazing the people he brought into my life to take over the stuff that I had to get done. I'm still in a point where I can't do everything, still bouncing back, but God brought people in my life to be able to do what I couldn't do at the time that I'm doing it, 'Cause that was a lot of anxiety going, laying on the bed for 4 days, before the surgery, and then even after the surgery, you laying there, all of this is going on. I got horses to feed, animals to take care of, property to cut, and can't do anything. That's a lot of anxiety that I went through, and just, have my wife. I'm sorry. The people that we've had in our small group, it called up just the Christian family that we have here was so supportive. It was just unbelievable.
Man, I'm serious. That's a powerful testimony. And I want to say that. I'm proud of you, man. And so I want to encourage you guys. I want to encourage you with it's a choice. And it's a choice for all of us. As we conclude today, I want you to remember this. You don't have to live overcome by anxiety. You don't. God has given us a prescription in His Word for us how we can overcome it and live with freedom and peace. We can live in the peace of God. An anxious heart will weigh you down. But a heart that worships God, that's grateful to God, that doesn't deny the mountains, but chooses to deny that mountain's right to control your life. Listen, no matter what happens, no matter what you're going through, we're not going to let this situation dominate our thoughts. I want you guys to take some time in your small group and dig into these ideas, discuss them with your group, get into the Word, pray for one another. We're praying for you guys. I'm praying for you, and I'll see you next week. God bless.